Good morning, Venerables. To begin with, we will start with a discussion on professionalism, working life in Singapore. Society measures success with different parameters. Every day we are faced with countless moments of decision-making when we are at work, in business, in universities, in a little shop down at Chinatown. Everyone makes decisions. In secular society, greed is the lubricant of profits. Greed is worshipped. So how do we, as Buddhists, trying our best to lead a life as guided by the Dhamma, how do we reconcile these two opposite directions? One, which talks of contentment, which talks of being able to accept things as they are, and second, the realities of mundane life. How do we deal with that voice of dissent from our ego versus the voice of the Dhamma? I would like to start this chit-chat by first starting off with Venerable Siha. Would you like to begin with some comments on it, Venerable? Yes.
Dear Mr. Wong, venerable members of the Mahasangha, first of all, I would like to remind you that how I came to Singapore and how I have experienced the life of Singaporeans first. I came to Singapore after 19 years after independence. At that time, I had seen the highways of Singapore. PIA ended at Jalan Ahmad Ibrahim. Air Raja Expressway ended at immediately after Benjamin Shah Bridge, Malayan Railway Station, and CTE ended at behind my temple at St. Michael Road at that time. All the while, I had seen that Changi Hospital and Tan Tock Seng and Alexandra Hospital was operated in old buildings. During these last 30 years, I quietly observed the environment. Entire architecture of this country has been changed. Therefore, I have to look into Singaporean in the different angle than the socialist or the economic point of view. Singapore merged with the Western culture as together with the Asian culture, whereby we have to respect the both, and whereby the success came into Singapore because of the merging with meaningful manner. I still believe that to continue our progress, as Singaporeans, point of view, I think my point of view, I believe that respect, gratitude is the most important thing for us to proceed the peaceful living in this tiny island. Even the Buddha's first message reminded us, after millions of years after enlightenment, Buddha gazing at the Bodhi tree saw his gratitude, sheltered me to attain the enlightenment. After the passing away of the Mahaprajapati Gautami, or the mother of adopted mother, and respect her by walking behind her coffin, dead body. It reminded us that every one of us never come to this society from the heaven. Someone has done so much of work for us. Therefore, we should show our gratitude or the respect for those, the pioneers, those who have done so much of enormous service to bring us up to this modern, third world, the modern society. First thing, I always believe that gratitude, respect, is the most important part of the Singaporeans to remember it again and again. Sometimes I tease myself, looking at 2,500 years old country, which I was born, is still the same. Nothing has done much. So you have done wonders. Every day, I believe that I'm asked how to lead a happy life in this society, Mr. Wong. You're asking me. So I believe that no way, every material wealth in front of you, no one can challenge it. And also, when the country was developed, I observed very carefully all the enormous, noble religious people got together and set their centers in this tiny island. Therefore, materially, you are well off, and spiritually, you also well off. Therefore, if you want to know Buddhism, Korean Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Burmese, Sri Lankan, Thai, Western, Eastern, any Buddhist societies are available here. Therefore, only think that whether you want to learn or not, whether you want to learn Dhamma or not, it's up to individuals. Therefore, I personally believe that Buddhism should be practiced in Singapore. This is the best place for you to practice Buddhism. Some people might think that Buddhists should go back to 2,600 years old, self-mortification, sleep under caves or the trees. It is impossible to practice Buddhism. Buddhism is a living religion. Therefore, what we have to do, understand yourself. Understand yourself. Thank you.
The first message of the day is that despite the enormous advances in terms of business infrastructure, a basic fundamental value which we must always keep is respect. Always have that in mind, appreciating all that has been done for us. So whether we are in business or in a corporate world, always show respect for everyone who has contributed. Yeah. Venerable Ajahn Brahm, will you please give your opinion?
Thank you. Again, I often call myself a CEM, a Chief Executive Monk, because I also have many, many monasteries and jobs I have to do. So I can relate to the fact that people are very, very busy. But I also relate to the fact that the idea of success, when I was young, I thought you had to be successful first and happiness would come afterwards. And then modern psychology started teaching us that no, be happy first, enjoy your profession, your job, your career, and then success will inevitably follow. But then I realized both were wrong, that happiness is success. Success is happy. So if you are happy, well done, you are successful. But it also means that we do work hard, as I work hard, and we do work hard, and we are happy to work hard. In other words, we make the joy of actually serving the most important part of our career, whether it's in the world, whether it's in the family, whether it's in a monastery. The happiness which comes out of giving, out of, again, a self-service to other people. Although in Buddhism we don't really call it self-sacrifice anymore, we call it no self-sacrifice. So if anyone wants to take a selfie with me afterwards, no, we don't do that in Buddhism. We talk no self-e. But it's also understanding decision-making. And of course, we all have to make many, many decisions in our life. And often we spend so much time making decisions in business or in government, in monasteries, that sometimes by the time that the decision has been made, we've got no energy left to actually affect that decision. And so these days, I say that please, just make the decision quickly. It's more important what you do after you've made the decision than spending too much time worrying on which is the right decision or the wrong decision. In other words, you make the decision right after you've made it, not before. And doing that means we do make decisions, we work to make sure it does become a good effect later on in our life. And also the fact that when we do, taking on from the idea of gratitude, gratitude is looking at the past and looking at all the wonderful things which people have done. It is letting into our mind only positive things, because when we learn from what works in life, what works in government, what's worked in Singapore, what's worked with the different Buddhist organizations which are represented here, we learn from, not from mistakes, we learn from what works. In other words, whenever something happens in the government which is a big mistake, please put it aside, forget it, let it go, discard it. But what works in a Buddhist organization, in your own meditation practice, in your business, please focus on that. Learn from successes, not from mistakes. And that means that if we keep focusing on what went wrong in our life, what went wrong in our organization, what went wrong in our governments, then we get depressed. We get negative, fault-finding, blaming, and we end up tweeting each other very early in the morning. I think you know who I'm talking about. But that is really negative. It doesn't solve any problems. But how about we learn from successes? What works? What causes progress, goodness, kindness, unity, harmony? If we learn from what works in business, in government, in meditation, everywhere, focus on that. That is called gratitude. Focusing on the good in our life, learning from that, and learning the secrets of success, progress, happiness, and harmony. Thank you.
Thank you. At Monash Clinical School in Johor Bahru, me and my colleagues, we had so far graduated 600 doctors, and they are working all over the world, many in Australia. And every time we meet, people will ask, oh, are you married? Or how many children do you have? Or have you got your postgraduate? Or are you a registrar? Or which position? Are you a consultant? Etc., etc. And as a Buddhist, I realized that in all these conversations, something is missing. We just had our 10th anniversary celebration, and that's why this came to mind. Nobody ever asked our graduate, are you happy? Everybody just wants to know how much are you earning, and have you got a contract or a 10-year job? Nobody asks, are you happy? So he could be absolutely miserable, holding a job, and we assume he's successful. And before I go on, can my timekeeper please wave your hand? I can't see you. Where's my timekeeper? Okay. All right. Professor Dhammasami, you have been teaching in Oxford. You're a chaplain there. You would have exposed yourself to a different mindset in that culture. Were you able to share your opinion on what we are discussing from that viewpoint?
Thank you. Thank you to the all. Yes, I've been exposed to both happy people and unhappy people. Listening to the theme on respect and then the interconnectedness of happiness and success. I'd like to enforce the message about the interconnectedness of our well-being. It doesn't matter which theme, which sub-theme we focus on today. To be successful, you need other people. You cannot set up a company and work just for yourself. You need other people, at least your customers. But the first message that I would like to put across that we talk so much about greed and all its consequences. But the first message I would like to put to you is, as a Buddhist, don't feel guilty for being successful. I have argued this at the Bangkok stock market, in one of the lectures. If you are successful in your business, you pay more taxes. That means your contribution is everywhere. In the hospital, where Dr. Wong works, you are there. In the school, in the university, good university like this, your contribution is there. In the good road, in the many trees like in Singapore, for the last 23 years, I have seen the changes since I have been coming to Singapore. In every tree, there's your contribution. But the more you are successful, the more contribution you make. And you can rejoice in this. Of course, interconnectedness. Last May, in one of the conferences, a CEO, a company from Shanghai, he mentioned how he changed the culture in his company. 40% of the profit for the shareholder, 20% for the welfare of his staff, another 20% for bonuses, another 20% going into the reinvestment. And they have seen a lot of changes. It's something like John Lewis, the big chain in England, where the staff have a lot of stake in it. So interconnectedness. If you talk about yourself as a parent, you are a parent as well as a child. Emotionally, when you have some emotion, that emotion you need to look after as your child. Even when you get older, okay, going into the silver generation, you will still have a child to mind, okay, in your heart all the time. You're not lonely. You're not lonely. But as a youth, you're also a parent, because you need to look after your emotion inside. You need to look after your body. That body, that physical body, that emotional body is your child. You and only you have to look after that. You can see interconnectedness demonstrated by the example of mother and child in Metta Sutta. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think it is time, instead of we looking at how the business world, the corporate world is going to affect me negatively, maybe we should look at it the opposite way. How am I going to bring the Buddhist culture into the boardroom? How do I bring the Buddhist culture into smart accounting? Now, Geshe Samten is a very learned and respected academic. Venerable, within the suttas, within the discourses on the Buddha, are you able to share with us the words of the Buddha with regards to people working in the corporate world, people working in business?
Good morning, the Honorable Sangha members, Dr. Wang, and the ladies and gentlemen. It is very encouraging to see many young faces. You saw this morning on the screen, your view affects your view of life, your world. That's really a very well considered and paraphrased kind of, title. Actually, your view affects the perspective of your world. In fact, ontologically, whatever is there outside is different, but what matters is phenomenologically how we perceive it and how we react towards that. That is the most fundamental. And what the Buddha has taught 2,600 years back is all about changing our mind, changing our perspective in order to change our life and to change the life of society. And Buddha has very practically mentioned that we have sufferings which we cannot deny, which we all face in our daily life. And now, what are the causes of those that are, as a Buddhist, we believe that they are all caused by our actions. And what are the actions that which are drawn and which are driven by? Those are our mind, our emotions, and how we perceive that beyond, as a fundamental kind of foundation is the perspective from which we look at the world. So now we have to see that when, again, we heard this morning about the quality of life, and also there is a perception that what is the standard of life, and blah, blah, blah country has a very good standard of life, whereas blah, blah country has a very low standard of life. We have already fixed that parameter of life, which is, we have to reconsider that. If, according to the parameter of modern world, if the standard of life is to be, seen, then Buddha's time, that is the lowest standard of life, because you don't have AC, we don't have, the best cars, you don't have the best living standards as, it is defined in the modern world, with, so many stories and with all those facilities and things like that. But during Buddha's time, there was the highest living standard. So we have to change that very perspective. Then only we can change, bring a fundamental change in our life, in our personal life, and change in our societal life. For that, because by bringing this kind of change, we can bring change in our individual life, we can bring change in our policy of education, we can bring change in the development of the country. I'm very happy that the ministers are here who are responsible for the development of the country and for, family and social life, right? And if we need to address these things at the fundamental issue, then we need to change at the fundamental level, that is from the educational system, and also bringing change in the perspective, perception, which is really a difficult thing, but we already had that right from Buddha's time. And also, it is not only Buddhism, but the major religious traditions have a wonderful, system of, living a perfect life. And within Buddhism, we have such a, large number of traditions which went, which evolved when Buddhism went into different countries, and it reshaped the culture of the individual, countries, and but maintaining the core element intact, which is wonderful to see. We can see the traditions we have here. We abide on the same principle and same philosophy of peace and Shila and Samadhi and Prajna. That is all we are bound together. So now the most important thing is that if we really need to change our perspective, we have to look into our mind. And the question that Dr. Wang has just right now raised about the corporate, because corporate world is playing a very pivotal role in the modern society. And now these days, as many of you, or perhaps most of you must be knowing that, earlier the qualification for a corporate CEOs to be successful, and at the time of enrollment and recruitment, the most important thing was IQ, right? And now it is no more IQ. It is not just IQ, but EQ, right? Emotional quotient is also very much important, because they now came to understand that how you can manage yourself and how you can manage your company and how you can manage your colleagues. You cannot just write down a set of rules that doesn't work, even at the corporate level and also at the governmental level. What we need to do is to change the mindset of the people, the colleagues, and the system of the company, so that it works in a very peaceful, in a very swift manner, in a very cooperative way. In order to make it a very cooperative and successful company, people have to cooperate each other in a very friendly manner, in a very compassionate manner, in a very patient manner. And for that, you have to address your mind and look into the emotions, emotional regulations. That is why now in the modern age, with the support of so many, the research at the very top level, world's #1 neuroscience and neuropsychology researchers, the emotional, trainings, the social emotional learning has become a very kind of important factor in schools and colleges and in general public and corporate life, how to, manage your emotion and how to manage others' emotions, self-awareness of emotions and awareness of emotions of others, and how to regulate and manage your emotion and manage others. In nutshell, we can say, after all, the management of your emotions and management of the colleagues and corporates and society is the most pertinent thing at the moment that Buddhism is sharing throughout the world in a very secular manner, which is, based on many. Of course, Buddhism has a very rich system of mind and mind training, but when you see that in a very religious system, then it becomes a more religious system, but belonging to a particular system. But if you look at it from a secular manner, that is applicable to every walk of life, from school to the corporate to the government. So I think it is time for us to pay attention to how to manage your emotion, emotion literacy is very important, and then you can go to emotion regulation, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. Now, Venerable Chuan Guan trained in computer engineering, and I chit-chatted with him yesterday. He worked in the corporate world prior to becoming ordained as a monk. So, Venerable, could you be able to give your opinion on this topic?
Good morning, dear Venerables, brothers and sisters. How are you all today? Oh. Hello. Yesterday when we were having the briefing, I was told that today at the opening panel we'll be having chit-chat. And I thought, really? This is a major conference. We're going to have chit-chat? And this morning, Doctor again said it's going to be a chit-chat. I was like, okay, I guess it's going to be a chit-chat. So when we came up, and then I hear all the speakers, I was like, this is the most serious chit-chat. And in front of 800 members, no less. So what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell you the story of a very typical Singaporean. Yeah. and with some Hokkien as well. When I was a young kid, I was basically born into a Buddhist family. The funny thing is that in many IRO's talk, when we go around the circle, every speaker will introduce themselves and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I was born a Buddhist. And then, hi, I'm so-and-so, I was born a Christian, I was born a Hindu, and so on. When it reached me, I'll tell them, hi, my name is Chuan Guan, I was born a baby. The last I checked, I was born just a baby. But because my parents were Buddhist, so I became a Buddhist without me knowing. And so when I was a young kid, kids being kids, we have a lot of questions. And I think the first time I asked my mom, when my mom asked me to do prayers, she passed me the joystick, asked me to kneel down, and then told me to pray. I was like, okay, so what do I say? And I'm sure a lot of you have asked this question. The interesting thing is that when I shared this in many talks, it seems like, well, let me just tell you what she told me. She said, put our palms together, and then say this, Namo观世音菩萨，护助保庇自己大水平安顺顺，爸爸大坛. It basically translates to that may the Buddha bless the family, young and the old, to have a smooth life and be safe, and may my father earn big bucks. Now, when I was a small kid, that was like, okay, sure, I will do that. Yeah, and I reckon I probably my mom many times. Yeah, and the time I remember was like maybe I don't know how many times. But she still patiently tell me. And I did that until maybe like, I don't know when, like secondary school or something, when I thought that was quite like base, quite, what's the word? Like, not very cool, you know. Like if a friend in school were to ask me like, how do you pray? I probably won't tell them. And I've been told I have only 1 more minute. I thought the other speakers speak a lot longer. Foreign talent. We should give our local talents some airtime, you know. So anyway, let me fast forward, since I have 1 more minute left. And those who have attended my talk, you know how long my 1 minute is. So anyway, my introduction to Buddhism goes beyond just that. I recall how when we go to temples, Buddhism was really about going in and then there's like lots of prayers. Chinese Mana temple, the aunties, and usually it's the aunties. Usually in the hall are all the aunties and the amas. They'll be in the black robes, they'll be chit-chatting. Oh, before that, they are in their normal clothes chit-chatting. And then there'll be a monk who come in and then start the drum, and then they all will stand up in a very dignified manner. All of a sudden, very dignified, put on their black robes, look around. And then sometimes there'll be this person who comes in and say, hey, this is my seat. This is one sure way to get a Buddhist upset. Take up that seat. All this struck me. I was like, okay, so that's how being a Buddhist is. But the most interesting thing is when we get out after the puja, or meanwhile, all the men, the fathers, and will be outside, yeah, just chit-chatting and waiting for the puja to be over. Actually, waiting for lunch. Yeah, Chinese temples are known for the cha bee hoon, the garlic chapsai. And that was the second lesson that I learned from my mom, because instead of chopping, you know, Singapore chop, we would be told to wait for others. And for the longest time, I can't understand why we had to wait for others. Like, I was there, I'm fast, I can just get a seat. But my mom would tell me, no, just let the rest go first. It dawned on me later on that these 2 things, I'm told time is up, so I can only tell you 2 things. I have a lot more to tell you. It dawned on me later on that this second thing is really about moving away from self-centeredness to others. But why are we self-centered? A show of hands, how many of you know that the person next to you is hungry? Yeah, I thought so. No one knows. Yeah? Everybody knows that when we are hungry, isn't it? And perhaps that's why, because we can only feel how we feel. Yeah? So it's hard for us to empathize for others. But then we learn. Gradually we learn. We learn to read signs. When people's face growl and when they keep showing up the sign, yeah, we learn. But the trouble is that it's not an easy process. So in Buddhism, we say, instead of having the self-cherishing attitude, we move away from that to cherish others as well. And I think we have more to say, and then I will come back again later.
Socially responsible corporate culture. I think that is what we need. I want to see a show of hands. How many people in the auditorium is less than 40 years old? Very good, venerables. You know, there are many, many places in Malaysia where I've shared, I'm the youngest person. 2 weeks ago, I was at a group at Bangsa. 70 people came. It's a group of people that meet every week in Bangsa. The oldest is 92 years old. And almost, again, I was almost the youngest. So I'm very, very happy, Venerable, to see so many young people here. Because the next topic of chit-chat involves really the young people. Because if you're a Buddhist and you say, I walk the path of the Buddha, and I am holding very strong to the teachings of the Buddha that I understand to be true, you will actually stand out from the crowd. For one, for example, if you are a youth, how strong do you hold onto your precepts? My medical students, for example, will say, Dr. Wong, birthday, little bit alcohol, okay one. But then I tell them you have 120 fellows in the class, there are only 52 weekends a year. Every week there are 2 birthdays. Okay? And this is just a minor thing. There are even bigger issues which we deal with. What about premarital sex? One of my students is working in UK right now and attending one of the Buddhist societies in UK. And she wrote to me and she said, you know, Dr. Wong, they do not interpret Kamesu Michachara the same way as you interpret it in Metalodge. It's a different interpretation. So now our youths are our future. How we train our youths will really be what Buddhism will be like in another 20 years. And there are issues with regard to Buddhist education. Buddhist education in Malaysia hasn't changed much. Metalodge was using the Sakya In syllabus, which was designed 50 years ago until a few years ago. We have not actually modernized our syllabus in teaching. So perhaps we are not catering to our youth what they would need to deal with life in the 21st century. Ajahn Brahm has been teaching in Western Australia and the rest of the world for a long time, and he's one of the most popular teachers as far as the youths are concerned. Ajahn Brahm, how do you think we should tailor or market or package our teachings so that the youths will be able to understand it and utilize it in daily life?
Okay, first of all, I think when I was, I think it was in KL some years ago, I split a youth group up into 2 groups, the boys and the girls. And then I asked the girls, the boys, you sit over there. Girls, what would you like in a boy? What type of boy would turn you on? What type of boy is hot for you? Number 1, use local language. And they started saying, well, he doesn't really have to look really sort of smart, doesn't have to wear designer clothes, doesn't have to have expensive things. They want a boy who is kind and trustworthy and fun to be with, someone I can depend upon, who's going to turn up at the right time. That's the sort of boy I would like. And I said, very good. And all the boys were taking notes. And then, okay, girls, you be quiet and ask the boys, what type of girl would you like to go out with and to commit with later on in life? And they said, I want a girl who is trustworthy, who is content with little, who is just kind, compassionate, forgiving, trustworthy. And of course, the other party were taking notes. And I said, well, really what you want in a partner is someone who keeps the 5 precepts. And they said, yeah. So what I was doing there is just saying that not taking alcohol and stuff actually makes you more attractive to the opposite gender. And the other thing which I found out recently was an article which was, and you may know this because this is science medicine, they say that the boys who are the most sexy are the ones who are bald. No, it's only a joke. But what's certainly the case is that when you put things like precepts, kindness, compassion, trustworthiness as a quality which does, make you more attractive, simple things like just the way you look. I was told recently that there was some people from mainland China who went to South Korea, some men, for actually a facelift. And actually what happened is when they tried to leave South Korea to go back home, because their face had changed, they couldn't go through the customs, the passport recognition. It was a big problem for them. But you don't need to change your face to make yourself attractive. And many young people understand this as well. Just a smile makes you very, very attractive. A simple thing, just like a happy countenance, means you're a nice person to live with, a nice person to go out with. The smile is actually a sign of happiness, trustworthiness, a very, very good person. Good people smile. Bad people do not. And dead people don't either. Those are the only 2 people who don't smile.
Okay. I think it is very important for our Dhamma teachers, and I know there are many in the audience, that when we teach our youth, for example, the precepts, not to market it negatively, do not, do not, do not, do not, but instead to look at it from the other viewpoint, that these are good qualities to have. There are no commandments in the Buddha Dhamma. The Buddha did not at anyone say at any time forbid us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can't do this. What he did tell us was to make us have the insight to realize that we will not want somebody doing such things to us, so we should not do it to other people. And our packaging of these teachings have to be reframed so that they will become qualities that the young would want to keep, rather than I'm told I am not allowed to take alcohol, I'm told I'm not allowed A, B, C, D, E. Now, perhaps Venerable Chuan Guan, you can comment on this because you are local bred and born. You went to NUS, NTU, lots of boys and girls there.
Oh yes, some more time for the locals. So about precepts, I recall an incident where we have the prep class for those who are taking the 3 refuge and the 5 precepts. So after the class, there was some Q&A, and then some students would come to me and say, Venerable, I'd like to take the 3 refuge, but I'm not ready for the 5 precepts. Can you give me 1 more year? So I was like, okay, let me see whether I hear you straight. You need 1 more year. They said, yeah, I need 1 more year. So I asked them, think about it. The first 4 precepts, to abstain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying, this 4 is about harming others. So you're telling me you need 1 more year because you want to harm others for 1 more year? That kind of ends the conversation.
Thank you very much. I want to remind you all that you can write your comments or your questions on paper and please pass it to the volunteers, okay? Now, Venerable Dhammasami, you have been working in Oxford for many years. What is your view of it from the viewpoint over in Oxford?
In the academic environment, people focus problem. And we talk about the first noble truth as the problem-based approach that signifying the whole Buddhist approach. So without talking about precept, you talk about problem in you and affecting other people, problem in other people affecting you. For example, if you live in a dorm, if someone doesn't wash up after cooking, after eating, how that affects you. So from there, you come to talk about consideration, interconnectedness, how we affect each other. That becomes finally what we consider to be in the traditional way precepts. So you start talking about the problem.
Okay, now Venerable, you have been teaching here for 30 over years. That's a good period. Have you noticed any change in the youths of 30 years ago when Brother Wilson was a young man trying to take the precepts to the youths of today that are taking the precepts? What is their attitudes?
Last 30 years, what has happened to me, Singaporeans influence me. That is the most...
They have changed you.
They have changed me. So that is the most important thing happened to my life in the last 30 years. Sometimes, some youth used to come, and whenever Changguan say, we most of the time have some seminars going on, our center, they were asking different ways of questions to entertain people, to entertain the business colleagues. Reverend Sir, we have to bring them to karaoke centers. And we have to bring them to Juchat or somewhere around at faraway places. So I have been thinking that how to answer this question too. They want to do business and they want to practice the moral basis life.
For the non-Singaporeans, Juchat is the red light district.
Okay, so my instruction for them, everything happening to us through our 6 doors. 6 doors, 6 doors, ear, eye, nose, tongue, and body. When you expose everything into the world, what is happening to us without our knowledge? Greed, hatred, and ignorance arose. Very important thing I am trying to encourage them wherever they go. Let not arise thoughts of desire within yourself whenever you open your senses towards the world. Try to neutralize as much as you can. I don't mention about precepts. Thank you.
So, but did the business people still go to Jutiet after your talk?
Yes.
They still went to Jutiet.
Yeah, because we are living in Singapore.
Geshe, would you like to give your comments with regards to precepts, young people, the youth?
Every religious order has its own precepts, and mostly they are all based on not harming others. So in the beginning, every religious system has don't do that, don't do this, and because before one understands why one should not engage into that, it is a kind of precept that is prescriptive. And then once person understands why we should not be engaging into that, then there is a spontaneous kind of engagement with the precept. So the fundamental reason behind the precept is to control your sensual faculties. And sensual faculties can be controlled through prescriptive modes, and the best one is through understanding why we should not be doing that. And once we have this, then I think there is a spontaneous kind of response and reaction towards all these precepts. So far as the young generations are concerned, and particularly in the school and in the preschool, now lots of researches are being done. Actually, the children of 4, 5, 6 years are so good in receiving the moralities in terms of refraining from negativities, and also in terms of sharing the positive compassion, being loving others and things like that, are very much naturally imbibed in their nature, in all human beings, right? But unfortunately, when we are brought up, then we are, given lots of informations and categorizations and compartmentalizations, and that shapes our mind and personality in a very negative way. That is how the education has to be changed. The education has to be changed by, with such a system that it can change our perceptions. It can change our, understanding of the world. And that is what many of the now science standards are doing in the West. And we are developing some kind of curriculum for schools and colleges. In Emory University, Stanford University, and Wisconsin University, they are, associating in developing this curriculum. Emory University has already developed a general curriculum, and they are going to go for a more detailed one. In India, we have developed a curriculum for sixth grade level, in which we have started how to refrain from engaging into negative by addressing our negative mind. Anger, hatred, attachment, how we should control this, because no one has ever said in our human history that I loved being angry this morning or the other day, right? No one has this kind of experience. So if that is the case, the source of negative afflictive mind is the source of suffering, then how we can, because that comes within now. No one is to be blamed for being responsible. But how we can control, it is within our hand. It's doable. And meditation, through meditation and mind training. Meditation and mind training does not necessarily mean to sit in an isolated place and to go to mountains and do meditations. You can do meditation in your kitchen, in your bedroom, in your bathroom even, right? Bathroom actually is the best place. So you can do meditation. You can train your mind. That is how we can transform ourselves. Buddhism is all about transforming your mind. No matter at what age you can do it, we can do it if we can start from infant level, and that is where the children are most receptive. That is found by scientific evidence.
Thank you very much. I have the greatest of admiration for all the Dhamma teachers, and so all of you who are Dhamma teachers in this hall, teaching young children, you really deserve our greatest respects, because it is not an easy age group to teach, especially the little ones, but what you do on that Saturday and Sunday will influence them for the rest of their life. So please continue the good work and think what a huge impact all of you who are involved in Dhamma education are doing for the next generation. Always remember. Okay, I've got a very short and interesting question here for Venerable Chuan Guan. It's because you're Singaporean. The rest are foreign talent. A Singaporean is asking you, what advice will you give for a young, active Singaporean under the age of 25 who has a wish of becoming a monk?
See me after this. Well, yeah. Well, advice for someone who wants to become a monk, or for that matter, to become a nun. I often ask people why they want to become a monk or nun. I think the intent is rather important. So check your intent. I've had the privilege to interview various individuals over the years of those who have the intent to pursue monkhood, and some of them nunhood. In fact, one of them is now in AB Monastery in, is it AB Monastery in, or where is that? In Seattle, with Venerable Tuptam children. Yeah. So I think the first thing, besides checking your intent, is then to look for a teacher. Yeah, not necessarily me. There are various venerables. You can see any of them after this. Yeah, and then from there, learn from the teacher first. Don't just jump straight in and say, oh, let me get ordained and tomorrow become a monk or a nun. Find a teacher or a community that you connect with. The trouble with connecting is we often connect on an emotional level. But you must know that the pursuit of monkhood, the spiritual path, is less about feeling good than about doing right. Yeah, so when you go to a center, instead of checking with yourself, oh, do I feel good here? Do the people treat me nice? Ask yourself, am I actually learning Dharma? But how do we know whether we are learning Dharma? Then check yourself. After being with the center for 3 months to 6 months, do I have lesser mental agitation? Do I get less worked up? Am I connecting with the Dharma in this way? Then if you find that you do connect, then proceed with the teacher, and then at some point, you can raise your intent with the teacher, and the teacher can guide you from there. This is what I would suggest. Thank you.
I think that's wonderful, Venerable, because I think anybody who wishes to ordain must do a lot of research before you literally jump into any one lineage or any one teacher. So please do your research work. Now, at this point in time, I would like you all to turn your attention to the back, because I have a very important question by a Brother Tanu. Where are you, Brother Tanu? Yes, he's there. And he's going to ask a very important question that actually represents a yearning, burning question in many of the senior people in our age, that is in that age group here. It's so important that I wanted him to ask that question himself personally. Brother Tanu, can you please proceed?
Yes, thank you. My age is 70. At this age, I feel that I have a limited, first to go for retreat, and also to remember, to understand such a spiritual teaching as a Buddhism. And my ability also to understand the full teaching, or they call it the right understanding. My question to Venerable, what is the advice for such a person at my age with this very limited ability?
Okay, what Brother Tanu is basically raising is that I have not that much time, and I'm too old to go on a retreat to sleep on a thin cushion and be bitten by mosquitoes. And I don't have enough time to study the Abhidhamma and all its associated lists. So what can I do, Venerables, with that short period of time to help myself be a good Buddhist? Venerable?
I think Mr. Wong finger point on me because I am the one who came to the stage for front line. Those who are at the front, they are the closer to also. And this is a very important question. Actually, Mr. Tan asked us. In Singapore, it might be difficult to give us a correct answer for him because as Singaporeans, they are attracted by the sensual pleasure much more than our countries. Whereby those who reach up to the age of 70, they want to do what they have done at the age of 18. Impossible, Mr. Wong, I think so. Okay. So therefore, during the time of the Buddha, also one elderly person approached the Buddha, 120 years old. Venerable said, could you please teach me something put into my mind to practice the Dhamma in accordance with what the Buddha said? My dear friend, still you have time to do something. Whatever come through your senses, as I mentioned earlier, try to neutralize the feeling with immediate effect. Whatever you have seen, whatever you have heard, taste or smell, with immediate effect, you try to neutralize your feeling, the upekkha level. Finally, what he has done, he faithfully practiced according to the words uttered by the Buddha. It mentioned that in the end of the day, he attained Sotapanna. Thank you.
That's a very beautiful teaching in the Bahiya Sutta. Whatever you see, taste, touch, just let it be that. Venerable Professor Dhammasami, would you like to comment on that? An elderly person now new to Buddhism says, I don't have much time. What can I do given whatever time I have to be a good Buddhist?
My unfortunately, mostly, is occupied by the future or by the past. We talk so much about being at the present moment, and actually we should also talk about the inability to be at the present moment. My take is that in the Theravada Buddhist language of Pali, we call mudita or anumodana. We use this as a form of meditation. It's an appreciation of your life. Whether you can stay at the present moment depends on whether your mind is at ease and appreciative of what you have. Sometimes, instead of mudita, in Pali we call pamudja. Please forget, but the Pali is about appreciation. So my suggestion is that you can find a teacher, meditation teacher, who can guide you in mudita meditation. First, for yourself, you focus on your past, the good one, trying to develop the ability to rejoice. And then to expand that to family members, to friends, and finally to people you think have hurt you. If you can do this, if you can reconcile with your past, the future is not scary, and the present moment is livable.
Okay. Wonderful. I think this resonates with a teaching that Ajahn Brahm has taught us many, many times. Rejoice in the good things in the past. That's the only things we take photographs and put in the album. All the sad things write on tissue paper, and after that flush in the toilet and don't think about it anymore. And then we proceed from there. And Venerables have advised, do some meditation, learn to take all that we perceive in the moment, and then take it as it is. The wholesome we continue, the unwholesome we drop. Okay, I've got a very important question. The handwriting tells me it's from a youth for Ajahn Brahm. Can you elaborate on premarital sex and the third precept? And then, before you answer, one simple note added. In one word, is premarital sex right or wrong? It's a digital answer in the digital age.
Having been a celibate monk for 43 years, I know all about sex. But indeed, you cannot actually quote any scripture, any sutta to say it is wrong. Basically, it's not wrong in the sense, as long as it's consensual, no coercion. It's going to happen anyway, no matter what your parents say. So let's make sure, out in the open, it's going to happen. Make sure it is in a loving relationship, not exploiting one another. So it's like harm minimization, I think is the right word there. And it's certainly, you cannot say that it is against the precepts. It happens. And I've often told people, I can't sort of say something which I didn't do myself is wrong. I had premarital sex. I'd never been married. But it was actually very useful as a monk to know exactly what I was going to give up. So, but please make sure it is not in any relationship where one party is exploiting the other. Either if you're a film producer, you should not have premarital sex with somebody you're going to employ. Obviously an employee and a worker, a teacher and a student, absolutely that's a no-no, or a person who has some disabilities which you exploit. So premarital sex, that is not going against the precepts. If obviously you have a partner already, please, that is against the precepts, whether it's you're already married. But please also remember that many people in Singapore, guys especially, think they can get away with it. But always remember that it was General Petraeus. He was the head of the CIA with all of the secret apparatus and spying and knowledge. He couldn't keep his premarital affair secret from his wife, and he was the head of the CIA. So don't think, guys, that you can keep it secret from your wife either. You're going to be busted, you're going to be found out, so don't do it.
Yep, okay. Now, I've got another very important question. I think this relates also to the last two things that we discussed. A member of the audience wants to know that if I had broken the precepts, the 5 precepts, what should I do? How can I recover? And we know, for example, in the Mahayana tradition, there's repentance ceremony, but other traditions may not have a similar ceremony. So in Western culture, for example, you can see a priest and tell the priest, I killed a politician, and then the priest will say, no, you're only supposed to confess the bad things, not the good things. Yeah, he's left, that's why. So, but it's a serious question because many people live with guilt that they have done something wrong. For example, I have ladies who see me and say, when I was young, I got pregnant, I had an abortion. I've never got over it, never. And when I went to Japan and visited a Buddhist society in Japan, they actually have a little room where they allow people to put little images of all the children that had either been spontaneously or therapeutically aborted, so that they have an avenue for them to vent their grief. And it's very nice because you see they write messages there for the child who has passed on. So within our local context, for example, somebody who has broken the 5 precepts and they are concerned, they feel guilty, how can we help them? Venerable Chuan Wan?
This is quite a heavy topic. I have actually counseled some individuals, some ladies who had past abortions. It's never an easy thing to handle. In fact, one of them was in the predicament of deciding whether to abort or not. So she came to me for counseling. So that's even before she did the abortion. Whether it's before or after, it's never an easy decision. There are those who say that you shouldn't. There are those who say you should. But ultimately, it's the person's choice. The question is, what do we do after that? In Buddhism, there's this verse: 忏悔则清净，清净则安乐. Yeah, through repentance, we purify ourselves. With purification, then we can be at ease. One of the first steps to doing repentance is to recognize the wrong in doing something, whether it's abortion or any of the precepts. Yeah, the first step is recognition. The trouble with sometimes is after recognizing it, it haunts us. We do not truly recognize and then move on from there. So in the repentance process, it's not simply recognizing and then revisiting it and then feeling bad and I'm an evil person and all. But there's a next step, which is to make a firm determination not to repeat again. It is in this determination that there is purification. And in one of the repentance puja, 慈悲道场水忏, the water repentance puja, it says that to overcome the wrong that we have done, we have to recognize that whatever wrong we may do, it all can be summed up into 3. Yeah, we call that the 3 obstacles: defilements, karma, our actions, and then the results. And it says that to remove that, 欲灭三障者, 先当何等心, 先当起7种. There should be 7 mental qualities that we should cultivate. And it includes qualities like loving kindness, compassion. And very interestingly, the last one is 观罪性空, to contemplate and to observe that even our wrongdoing is empty in nature. Now before we run off and think empty means nothing, it's not. It is that the wrong we do also depends on condition. And there are many conditions involved, one of them being ignorance, delusion, our great hatred and delusion. And that is to recognize that the wrong is not inherent in us. That if we change the conditions, then the wrong do not have to happen. That we can be free of that wrong. And in so doing, we can forgive ourselves. And also perhaps forgive others who may be involved in the whole process. Yeah.
Thank you. Many of you may have taken part in the repentance ceremony in the Mahayana tradition, which is in a way very, very therapeutic, but other lineages may not have a similar tradition. What would you advise, Venerable?
At the beginning of the day, you do not know what is good or what is bad. You have no right views according to the Dhamma. You might commit certain kind of crimes due to the ignorant. Once you contact the Dhamma, you no need to regret what you have done in the past. You have to develop the good karmas. It brings you a lot of happiness in the rest of your life. Therefore, in Theravada Buddhist tradition, Even we refer to the Venerable Angulimala's story. So much of things he has done in his past because of the ignorant. By seeing the Buddha, by realizing the true Dharma, Angulimala attained an Arahantas. Therefore, whatever you have done in the past before knowing the Arya Dhamma or the Noble Dhamma teachings, you might do you might commit a lot of things, but from now onwards, what we have to do? Continue to follow the Dhamma methods, path. It will bring you happiness. Even you can attain the Arahant path at this present level too. Don't worry.
I think that's a wonderful teaching because I don't think many of us in this room had murdered 999 people. And if someone who had done that much harm on seeing the path can end his karma and become enlightened, there is actually much hope for us. You can refer to a sutta called the Sword Crystal Sutta, in which by doing lots and lots of good work, we maintain a very wholesome life and we let the good qualities come to surface. And it's not that the bad qualities have just simply disappeared overnight. It's just that we do lots of good and more good, that our mind naturally will flow towards what is wholesome and in that sense dilute what is unwholesome. I have another question here which is very interesting. It says that other faiths say that you believe in it, you go to heaven after you die. If you do not believe in it, of course, you go the other way around and you go to hell. Whether it is a literal heaven or a literal hell, I do not know, because many Buddhists, of course, think that heaven and hell are metaphors for states of mind. And he says, as a Buddhist, this uncertainty fills me with anxiety and worry. Can you please advise me? Ajahn Brahm?
Very good. It's quite obvious that some of the people who say those things are just so nasty people to live with. If they go to heaven, I don't want to go there as well. But it never makes any sense to me. It's not what's said in the book. This was Voltaire once said, that if a God was the author of any book, he'd be the author of human reason, of the truth in the heart. And the truth in the heart doesn't make any sense. The really, really good people who haven't believed in your type of tradition, your type of belief, will go to hell? Do you mean like, someone like a Gandhi, someone like a Mandela, because they didn't go to your church or your faith, they will have to go to hell? And that makes no sense at all. So it's obvious to me that if it's a really good person, a kind person, a moral person, then of course that after their death, they would go to a place which is suited for them. In other words, good people go to good places. You don't have to believe in this faith or that faith to go to this particular heaven or that particular heaven. You go to the place where you deserve those heaven realms. If you look at those heaven realms like you see in the paintings, the murals in Buddhist temples, those heavenly realms which they have in those days, they don't make any sense to me at all. For example, just a heavenly realm where you have to wear white clothes and wings. I mean, come on. Life has, especially fashion, has improved since then. Listen to harp music. When I was a lay person, I wasn't interested in listening to harp music. I would like rock and roll. I always thought that's where Elvis Presley went, and I wanted to hear some good rock. So in other words, the heaven realms, yes, they exist, and it's said in the sutta, these are mind-made realms. You make them. You make them according to what you think you deserve at the end of your life. In other words, they're self-made. The same in hell realms. They are self-made realms, mind-made realms. And you stay in there as long as you feel you deserve to be punished. And I'm going back to the thing about guilt as well, because I'm very passionate about what people do, religious leaders do to women who've had abortions. Because who are we to criticize or comment? Men usually make those moral distinctions, and men have never been pregnant. They don't know what women go through. And number two, I think it's really bad enough to empathize what you must go through, and then afterwards to criticize you and make you feel guilty. For goodness sake, Do not feel guilty. You did the best you possibly could. Karma comes from your motivation. If it's out of compassion, if it's out of what you think is the best in all situations concerned, then well done. Tough decision. You need support, not criticism. Certainly not guilt. So for me, I don't think you really need a repentance. You should never even need to have repentance when you haven't done anything really wrong. So you learn. Next time, make sure that you use contraception, your family planning. Do not be sort of forced into an act which you regret the consequences afterwards. So you learn. You learn from mistakes, and you grow from them. You don't punish yourself because of them. Mistakes are good. That's where we learn to make a better society. We shouldn't be criticizing one another or blaming ourselves or blaming others. So anyway, I'm very passionate about abortions and the way we sort of treat people with blaming. And anyway, the kid usually has another chance to come back next time. So they come back in. And I've seen this many, many times. People who've had abortions, they usually get pregnant later on when it's ready, and they can recognize that child. Yeah, this is the one who came before. They didn't get through the door this time. Just like in the airlines, sometimes they're overbooked and they drag people off the plane. What happens to them? They get the first available flight and they get an upgrade afterwards. That's my metaphor, what happens if you have an abortion. Dragged off the plane, but they get a new one afterwards. Sorry.
Now, this is a question from a very senior member. He is probably at least twice the age of the average of age of people in this hall. So it's a very important question that we have to address. And Geshe and Professor Dhammasami, you both have spoken about training the mind, minding the mind, and he's asking, what can I do at my advanced age to prevent unpleasant thoughts from coming into my mind? Can I talk to my cells? He said.
Very good question. And the first, I would like to say a couple of sentences, and also it is related with the last question. Elderly person, how we can do the practice. For general kind of advice, the elderly persons are more matured. You have more maturity. Since you have more maturity, you have more experiences, and you can get conviction through the teachings. Buddhism is not at all a kind of ritualistic religion. It is all about transforming your mind. That is through education, through understanding the reality, through understanding your mind, and then training the mind. So you can do it. All matters is intensity of your practice. If you practice at a very thin level without intensity, if you do for decades, there won't be any improvement. But if you do it with the very serious intensity, within a very short period of time, you can see changes within yourself. In just a few months, you can see. And I used to say that, normally in my, when I interact with people. Say, for example, compassion, training of compassion, and training of tackling with the negative emotions. You can do it instantly. Like a 2 minutes noodle, you can do it instantly and stop it. When the different kinds of thoughts come, you need to know how to do meditation. Don't just do meditation by reading books, and confining your information just simply to the printed materials. Go to a teacher who is experienced and then learn how to meditate. Once you are able to meditate, then you can know how to control your thoughts, how to filter your thoughts, and then how to tackle, because most of us have this problem of bombardment of thoughts all the time, and then these bombardment of thoughts give rise to negative emotions that brings unhappiness. And bombardment of thoughts, you can filter them, and also you can utilize those the thoughts into a positive manner. Buddhism teaches a lot about converting the adversity into opportunity. So you can convert these adversities into opportunity through training, and then once you have this kind of training, and you don't think that you have to go through a very long period of training. You can learn it, in a very short period of time. And as I said, your isolated meditation in an isolated place is very much preferred at a greater extent, but you can do and start it instantly at any place, wherever you are, and at the workplace particularly, you can practice it, you can experience it, you can implement these trainings and see the result within yourself and in the society.
I think that's wonderful. A word of advertisement to the very senior member who asked that question. Ajahn Brahm is running a retreat tomorrow. I'm sure you can take one more student.
And it's also, you don't have to sleep on the floor on a bed of nails. Sometimes people have a really strange idea of what meditation is. Some of these retreats, you have a nice soft bed, 3 meals a day, buffet service, and you can sit as long as you like. If it gets too hard, then stop it. It gets compassion. So, as you were saying, that sometimes there's many forms of meditation, and kindness, compassion is so important, in meditation practice. And so I feel a bit embarrassed if I can't have a retreat center or teach meditation which doesn't welcome people of all ages, from children up to those who are in wheelchairs or those who need special attention. Because those people who are towards the end of their life, or are in some areas, people call them disabled. Sometimes I don't like that word disabled. I say like enhanced in one area, and sort of not sort of enhanced in other areas. So I think that we should actually change our concept of meditation, especially meditation retreats, to be welcoming, adapted to people from all, even faiths, all ages, all sexual discriminations, sexual orientations, and also from people from all health bases, whatever. So I think it's incumbent on us to actually have retreats for everybody. Those people who are towards the end of their life, you need it more than anybody else. So, because, as you come into towards the end of the life, you have so much experience, so much maturity, so much can be offered. So I think it's up to us to tailor our retreats so I never have to hear that question again. You are welcome.
Brother Tan Ho Soon of Nalanda brought a group of us to see one of the most beautiful Buddha images ever carved on earth. It is at Mandut, and there, in this huge stone carving, a beautiful, serene image of the Buddha. And that Buddha image, in that particular Chandi, the Buddha image is seated on a chair. So I'm sure if there were chairs in the forest in those days, all the elderly members who had gone to learn meditation from the Buddha would have been sitting on chairs. Yeah. And so if any one of us attended Ajahn Brahm's meditation retreats, you will see he said, please sit on a chair. I'll put a seat belt for you so that you don't fall off, you will fall asleep. Venerable Professor Dhammasami, what is your experience with this? Yes, meditation in a very elderly population.
I think a form of posture is culturally oriented. So I don't want to go into detail into this because Ajahn Brahm has already explained it very well, which reflect my take as well. But regarding the topic that Keshe has touched on earlier, I'd like to second by saying that when we have bad thoughts, bad thoughts, we try to chase them away, we fight with them. We go into fight or flight mode. We can change our perception by seeing our thought as our child. a difficult child. Your child is not going to behave the way you like all the time. But your child, you're not going to abandon it. But you're not going to indulge your child either. So in practice, what we do is that, at least in my case, we divide our thought into two. One is the pattern of the behavior of thought. The other is the contents. The content of the thought, the issue, the narrative, the story. I suggest that we focus more on the pattern of thought and not get involved too much in the contents. Because whatever the contents, even if you have chased this content away, if you haven't changed the pattern of your thought, the same or similar content will appear or will be created anew. That is why we talk about changing the pattern of thought. Why our mind behaves this way? And to look at that in a very neutral way, we can call this non-self.
Yes. I think that as we learn more about the Buddha Dharma, as our ignorance becomes less, as our wombing becomes less wombing, then the sankharas which follow, our pattern of thoughts, our behavior, slowly changes. And I think that one of the questions which was sent to me is, what is the fundamental difference between the Buddha Dharma and other religions? And what all the five venerables had just discussed actually points out to one of the fundamental differences. In the Buddha Dharma, we train to change ourselves, our mind, our perspective, our behavior. It is a very internally driven exercise to become better people. It is not dependent on an external force to bail you out, do some things for you, make you good, forgive you, etc. So to the person who asks, fundamental difference, Buddhism or the Buddha Dharma, strictly speaking, is a way of life, a way of training the mind to think in tune with the realities of life, rather than take up blind faith or dogmatic approach to life. It is something that is stated very clearly in the Kalama Sutta. You see it for yourself. Is it wholesome? Is it good? If it is wholesome, if it is good, then you apply it. Not because someone tells you to, but because you have realized that this is in tune with the realities of life. Now, another person here has asked that, I am a CEO at a big MNC, where my colleagues come from diverse backgrounds. How do I bring Buddhist values to work? How do I, in other words, be a shining example to my colleagues from all over the world? Venerable?
Just now, also, I have to say something forgotten immediately, because the silver generation. In this modern world, we are asking how to influence others to come into Buddhism. It is marketing. Marketing is very important. Most of the other religious people are doing good system of marketing, market. They are doing well. Buddhist, quiet. Why? If I ask someone to do something, how to bring your friends to the Buddhist societies, the communities, other group of people say it is against the Buddha's word. It is against the Buddha's word. So it is difficult. If I say you have to recite these particular verses to be successful, other one say that it is nonsense. That kind of our interaction is not proper nowadays. Therefore, as I mentioned earlier, Singapore is a museum of Buddhism too. There are many types of Buddhist groups, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and so forth. Sometimes they confuse their mind due to the external appearance of the figures. It's external appearance. Some people question me. They never come to my center. Then I say, Venerable Sir, please tell me whether you are belong to Mahayana, Vajrayana, or Hinayana. Then I keep silent for a while, Venerable Sir, because I am living with all the religious masters. Even you look at me, I am different a bit, because I had said early, influenced by Singaporeans. Quietly, I say, I am the disciples of the Buddha. I belong to the Buddhayana. There is no sect like Buddhayana. I say, I follow strictly what the Buddha taught, not the master source taught me. That is important for everyone to promote the Dhamma in this particular developed society. Diversity brings us a lot of conflict. Thank you.
I think that if you are a Buddhist in Singapore, you probably have the best opportunity to be awakened. You have a location in which venerables and highly learned academics and teachers of all traditions passing through, just like a trading port, they also pass through Singapore as far as the Dhamma is concerned. I think you have more availability of suttas than any disciple in the Buddha's lifetime has access to. They probably have just access to an hour of the Buddha's teaching, then they retreat somewhere and reflect. You have got all the resources at your disposal here. You have more than enough Buddhist societies, and in just 1 kilometer north of Singapore, you have more meditation centers in the forest than is needed for, I think, the entire Buddhist population of Johor, of Singapore. In every state in Malaysia, we have at least 2 or 3 meditation centers in beautiful settings, which are sadly underutilized. So they will welcome you. So now there are many, many questions which are sent to me with regards to education, teaching the next generation, dealing with young children who are so playful. Another one saying, all my students are like monkeys, what do I do? My instinctive answer is give them bananas. And another one saying that my students think that Buddhism is so boring, how do I make that class more interesting? Another one which says that my friends who are with me in school thinks that Buddhism is so boring, what can we do? And another one that says, my friends from other religions ask me, what do you learn in Dhamma class? It's so boring. So I think that with so many questions related to the same topic of education, and you have got really a master of education in your audience there, Brother Tan Ho Soon, who has literally almost redesigned the curriculum for Buddhist education in his center and for many parts of Malaysia. I'm going to market him. Please grab him in a corner afterwards and ask his advice, because all these relate to one topic. As a Dhamma teacher, how do I make my students interested in the Buddha Dhamma? As a Dhamma teacher, how do I make my classes interesting? And Brother Tan's center actually runs courses for Dhamma teachers and how to teach young children of various ages. So you have got a lot of other opportunities to ask questions in the afternoon breakout sessions. So it is quite impossible for me to be able to forward all of these questions, but rest assured, you have got another session in the afternoon with many more venerables whereby these questions can actually be raised. Those interested in education, follow Brother Tan Ho Soon. I'm going to come here back to the family now, because there are also many questions with regards to the family. For one, I have a question here which says that I have different family members with different faiths. One believes in God, One belief say must pray, one belief say must not pray, and I've got parents and our younger generation with different faiths. And so it makes it a very complicated situation. How do I, as a Buddhist, be able to fit in? How do I help them? How do I help myself in this very complicated situation? Any of these venerables here would like to start off? Because I think it involves every one of us. Okay, if you have been counseling people with such problems, perhaps you would like to start? Oh, Ajahn Brahm, okay.
Okay, it's just called fusion. These days you only eat Sri Lankan, Singaporean food every day, every afternoon, every evening, or do you eat many different types of food? The same like many different types of religion. Let's take the best out of each one, like the best out of each different type of Buddhism. So let's learn from each other. And if you are a really wise, compassionate Buddhist, why not sort of learn from each other? There was a couple years and years ago. They was a Catholic married to a Buddhist and asked advice, how should we live together? And the monk, as my former Ajahn Cakka, he gave a wonderful piece of advice. He said, on a Saturday, you husband, Italian Catholic, you come to the Buddhist temple with your wife. And token to the Thai wife, on a Sunday, you go to the church with your husband. You do things together. Learn about each other's faith so you can understand and grow together. Why not? Why can't we not, in a family, just get the best from each other's practices? And then maybe we can actually learn that, yes, a family can live in peace and harmony together with different religions, just as Singapore does with many different religions, and maybe next our world can live in peace and harmony together with all the different religions and no religions, thereby respecting one another's different views. The old simile, I'm not going to go into detail here, the elephant and the 7 blind men, so please let that simile be known to all the family members, each person feeling a different part of the elephant. And instead of fighting on who is correct, we combine our experience, our knowledge, and thereby we will understand an elephant is a big rock on 4 tree trunks with a fly whisk in the back, a big water jar at the head, at the front, with 2 ploughs on either side, a snake in the middle, and 2 big fans on either end. A much better description of an elephant from people who are blind and never seen one, and thereby they can actually work together to create even a better understanding of the world than one person of one faith can understand by themselves.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got another 2 questions which are basically related to the same issue. Relationships between, of course, the younger and the older generation is in both directions. And in one scenario, it's an elderly person who is a Buddhist, practicing, and children have converted to another faith. And in this situation, the children criticize the mother, and of course the mother feels very hurt that you are wrong, you know, you don't do this, you're going to suffer consequences of etc., etc., etc. That's one scenario. The second scenario is, this is now the younger generation that has studied the Dhamma and is walking the Buddhist path. And his concern is, my parents are not Buddhist. How do I enable my parents to convert to Buddhism? Actually, I think we cannot convert anybody. We convert ourselves. I don't think we ever convert another person. So here we have a 2-way traffic, 2 different scenarios. First scenario, of course, in a very modern westernized society where there are lots of issues of evangelism, etc., etc., old people following either traditional Chinese folk belief or walking the Buddhist path. Yes, it's true, sometimes children can say things which are unpleasant. How do we help them deal with this? Because the mother is very upset by it. Venerable?
So I've shared with some individuals before about how children who are given the privilege of deciding their own religion should remember this privilege that was given to them. And in turn, they should respect their parents' privilege to decide for themselves as well. just as their parents have let them choose themselves, they should let their parents choose themselves. Yeah, it should go both ways. As far as the other way around is concerned, where the child has become a Buddhist, and then the parents are maybe Taoists or free thinker or something. An interesting situation was when one student came to me and said, "Shifu, I learned a lot from the classes, and I try to share the teachings with my parents, but can't seem to get them to understand or to budge. Can't even get them to the temple." So the first question I asked was, how is your relationship with your parents? And the most amazing thing was that, oh, we're not really on talking terms. So I'm like, bingo. And the first thing I have often advised or share with students is build up a relationship first. Not so much just to sort of cajole them into coming into the Dhamma, but really be interested in them. Yeah. And if you are genuine about it, they can feel the difference. Spend time with them. I mean, all these years there's this talk about quality time versus quantity time for parents to children. But it's the same for children to parents. From what I've seen over the years, relationships, it takes time. You cannot just ignore the person for 10 years or like the whole week just busy and then like once a month have a high impact event and then that's it. Yeah. It doesn't work for parents to child. It doesn't work for child to parent as well. You need to spend time. And if you spend that time to listen to them, then perhaps when you talk to them, they will listen to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, Ajahn, you have family members who are not of the Buddhist faith. Of course, your little clip on opening the door to your heart is very touching, and most of us have learned much from that clip about your conversation with your father. But even within this generation, you have siblings who are not of the Buddhist faith. How do you relate to that?
Again, just relate to them with things which everybody can relate to, like kindness, respect, and love. And again, just not criticizing anybody for their faith, but respecting them. I think one of the problems with the religious takes a lot of listening, a lot of non-judgmental listening, in order to understand and solve conflicts between parents and children, different parts of the same religion, and also different religions.
What about people who do not respect your faith?
I respect. Then it means that I need to work harder into making my particular example more respectable, easier to be respected.
Okay. All right, here I've come to a very simple digital answer again, and I'm going to ask every venerable. It's really a yes-no answer. Of course, you can add in a line. Someone in the audience asks, addressed to all venerables, so I suppose it touches all three lineages. It says, is it okay for the husband and wife, doesn't say whether it's a husband or a wife, to divorce because they have different views in life and decision making over the years? In other words, they have grown apart over the years because they have got different views with regards to life and with regards to how to make decisions. In other words, to put it simply, is divorce acceptable within the Buddha Dharma? Venerable?
I have to go back because Venerable has been discussing about the premature sex or something?
Premature sex.
Premature sex, yes. Those who are in age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you are dealing with hundreds of people. What are you going to do after you get legally, you get married? What are you going to do? Have anything for you to do, the successful family life? We have to ask this question too. Whereby, when they go into the family life, they might have different opinions. Why? Taste is different. You understand what I mean? Then, started to have different ways of rhythm. behaviors, patterns of behavior, it causes most of them to be away from the family life. I personally personally seen these matters. You see? And another big problem in this country, I work, I earn. I work, I earn big money, you also earn big money. No need to have the family bond. We have to separate and live, never mind. After the first child was born, mother want to go her own way, father abandoned. So this is the problem that we can see at the modern days. So remember, the rest in Singalova, the Sutta, reminded us many times, we have certain duties to perform, not the money matters. Money can give a little things only. Respect is very important. When your husband come back to the house, you have to do the duties as wife. The wife come to the house as husband, he has some duties to perform. If you born in this dutiful families, I think they will continue with the family life. Those days, family, they can remain long years. Then modern generation, it is difficult.
So I think it's very important that most countries have laws with regards to sex with minors, and in a way that at that age they are not matured, they really haven't formed clear lines of thinking, and we need to protect them, because as Venerable said, if you, for example, get married very young, then later on you will find that your views, thinking process might actually diverge quite significantly. I mean, I always tell people that the woman I married is completely different from the woman I sleep with every night, because over the 3 decades she has completely changed, and so have I. But thankfully we both changed in the same direction. So the question is, of course, if both of you had changed in opposite directions and that marriage is really just in name, is it okay to divorce? Ajahn Brahm.
Once everything else has been considered, like your other responsibilities, your children, even your finances, that anicca, things don't last forever. Some relationships are very short, some medium, some last for many, many years, and sometimes for many lifetimes as well. So, but obviously that if it's something which is happening in your relationship and it's not helpful for either person, not helpful for the children who are now grown up, then there's nothing which is prohibited. Buddhism does allow divorces. It's impermanent. So you work as hard as you possibly can to make sure the relationship lasts as long as possible, but in the end there comes a time when it's the obvious, the kindest thing to do is actually to separate amicably. But please separate amicably rather than going through divorce lawyers. Because sometimes you go through, I'm not sure what the legal system is in Singapore, but so many people, they get divorced, and it's not as they split the assets 50-50, they split the asset 5% to the man, 5% to the woman, and 90% to the lawyers, which is terrible. So please be careful there. But just like being a monk, sometimes that it works, that you are a monk for a long, long time, and you develop in the past, but sometimes people become monks or nuns, and after a while that it's obvious they're not a happy monk. It's better to be a happy layperson than a miserable monk who shouldn't be there. So just we have the opportunity to change our minds, so too do people have the opportunity to change their minds in marriage as well.
Thank you. Professor Dhammasami?
I think people go into marriage or they get divorced because they think this is a form of answer to their needs. Just as Ajahn Brahm has just said, when everything is considered. Here, you may have divorced a person, but many people still hold on to the emotional pain, the negative view that they have developed of each other. with that, it's very difficult for you to have another successful relationship. So when you start thinking about divorce, which is acceptable, it has to be done with compassion, with due reflection, because every decision has consequences.
Geshe?
So the question is about
Divorce.
Divorce, right?
Yes.
I think we have to go back. First of all, before divorce, you should choose your partner right at the beginning with a thoughtful mind. That's very important. And also you should have a proper kind of mindset and perspective that you are choosing your partner for yourself or to live together. That's very important. You are choosing your partner to live together, to live a life that is for both the person and for the coming offsprings, right? If you have that kind of perspective, then there would not be any chance for divorce. Divorce starts when the interest diverges. And then one goes to the east and the other goes to the west, and then ego plays a prominent role in that. Ego jumps, and afflictive mind jumps, self-interest jumps. And the self-interest is selfishness, actually. So once you have this selfishness, that brings the schism in between your life. And then if you start feeling that this kind of life is not going to work, then you should try through mentoring yourself, through, bringing awareness of yourself, and just look into your mind why this is happening. No internal, element would be making things, but making contributions to make this happen. But your mind itself is, even though you might think that there are many, external factors which play in the whole, process. But if you look deeply into your mind, then you are responsible for that. So if you try to, understand yourself, again, back to the emotions, you must have a good literacy of emotion, and then how that affects your life, and the partner's life, and the life of the family. If you have children, then you are very much responsible for your children. You have obligations, towards the children. So better not to make it happen, because by going through that, it will impact, negative impacts on your children, on your family, on your spouse, and on your life as well, right? So you must contemplate in such a manner that you can, you can bring back your love and compassionate attitude as you started with. And that is the best way, and that is doable. That is, I have seen many families at the verge of divorce, they got reunited at many places with advisors and things like that. And then they realize at the end that, yeah, I have not thought into, about that whole process. So if I go through that process, then I realize that I can come back and have a good family life. And if nothing works at all, which is actually not possible, but then it is better to live a better life, right?
Yeah, thank you, Geshe. Again, this reflects a fundamental difference between the Buddha Dharma and other faiths. And here we are again looking inwards and always asking ourselves, contemplating whether this problem is something up there rather than it's always her fault, his fault. Yes, Venerable Chuan Guan, you have the last word on this.
The short answer is yes, you can get divorced. I got a feeling that the intent behind asking this question is similar to how many times when we approach matters in our life, we often first ask ourselves, is it against the teachings? Is it against the precepts? Sometimes I tell people, instead of asking that question first, you should perhaps ask yourself the first question, how does that affect others? Because if it is going to affect others adversely, then maybe we shouldn't do it. We don't even have to consider the precepts. If we do something and we are not proud to let others know, that others will scorn us and we will feel stressed and others will feel stressed or hurt, then we don't even have to think about the teachings or the precepts. We shouldn't do it. But maybe your friends and family are, oh, okay. Then you ask yourself, is it against the law? In this case, it's not against the law as well. Yeah, then you ask the last question, or maybe second last question is it against the precepts? Here, there's no precepts against divorce. Then perhaps you should ask your intent. The thing is that all the venerables have shared about the before process. Perhaps we could look at relationships in a few stages. Yeah? Many people start off with how they feel. Yeah, we choose someone based on how we feel. Then after the initial stage, some people proceed to consider whether the person is alike to us. Yeah, then we can move forward. And perhaps others may even go beyond that to discover the differences and accept the differences. Unfortunately, not everybody progressed through this whole process. Yes. Some people are just stuck at the first stage, and then they get married. And then what happened? I tell some young couples, girl, look at this man. He's going to be the same man after 10 years. Don't expect him to change. You may think you can change him. A lot of ladies have told me after 10 years, when they come for counseling, and they're like, I thought he's going to change. So I've been telling young couples before they get married, he's not going to change. Not the way you want anyway. He's going to change in ways you don't want. And guy, you look at this girl, he's going to change. She's going to change. She's going to be the same girl. Physically, she's going to change. Mentally, emotionally, as you have shared. And that's the thing, because if we get stuck in the first stage of a relationship, and then you get married, and after 5 years, 10 years, the person changed, and especially changed not according to our wishes, can we still accept that? If we can accept, then we can learn to appreciate the differences and grow together. If not, then it becomes very difficult. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you so much. Ajahn Brahm has written quite a few context articles and commentaries with regards to the Vinaya, and I think not a few of us in this audience would have read his work with regards to the Vinaya, which governs the Sangha. And although they come from different lineages, many of you may realize that much of the Vinaya is actually quite common. And there's a question which has also been raised by a few people, and their question is, as a good Buddhist, what is the karma of eating meat, which the questioner thinks is in a way taking life, which the questioner thinks is against the first precept? Ajahn?
That is a very common question, but I'd point out that just in the last years of the Buddha's life, Devadatta just specifically asked the Buddha, can we create a Vinaya rule that to make all monks, and by extension nuns, vegetarian? And he refused. And that's actually a thing for us to actually consider. Sometimes I ask, why did he do that? And I think the probably answer is, this is just my own opinion, because he wanted to make Buddhism acceptable for all people, even those who are vegetarians, vegans, those who eat meat as well. So to make it acceptable, to make it not something which is obligatory if you become a monk or a nun, but something which is your choice. And there's many reasons why people do eat meat, and I eat meat myself as a Theravada monk of many years, and it is sometimes it's because of health reasons. People argue with this, but my mindfulness and awareness of my own personal health means that I've tried many, many times, can't do it. So it means it is allowing more people actually to become monks and nuns in this tradition. It's encouraged, it is praised, but not all people can do it. So this is one of the reasons why I think the Buddha did not make it a vinayal for people to eat meat. People ask, what am I these days? Am I a vegetarian? I say, no. Am I a fruitarian? No. I'm a humanitarian, which doesn't mean I eat humans.
Thank you, Ajahn.